It's very easy to get despondent about the fun of driving in the automotive world because of our move to electrification. Forums are literally littered with comments about how heavy batteries are and how those pure, unadulterated driving experiences have now left us. Of course, we do have fast electric cars. Well, Tesla sorted that for a start. And of course, we've got the Porsche Taycan, and the new Cayman is going electric as well. And there's a glut of hypercars about to descend upon us, such as the Lotus Evija, the Pininfarina Battista, and of course the Rimac Nevera. And as I say, making an electric car go fast is one thing, but making it appeal to an enthusiast and making it a real pleasure to drive, well, that takes some doing. But that is exactly what, of all people, Hyundai are now trying to do with these two. And boy, have they played a trump card. Welcome to another edition of Sneak Peeks. Welcome to the rather catchily named N Vision 74 and Hyundai RN22E. And as always, welcome to AutoEV. Now, before we get on to this week's edition of Sneak Peeks, is it of course that time where I ask you to make sure that you subscribe to the AutoEV channel. And once you've done that, press the little bell button that's down below, because then that way you'll be notified of when our next video goes live. Once you've watched the video, if you enjoy it, make sure you give it a thumbs up and leave us some comments, good or bad. So what do we have here? Because it's only recently we've actually done a sneak peek on the Hyundai Ioniq 6. Well, that's not really a Hyundai Ioniq 6. Well, it sort of is. It's called the RN22E, and both of these concepts are actually what Hyundai refer to as rolling labs. In other words, they're there for the development and the design and the application of certain technologies that's going to make this the world of the performance EV a viable one. Bit of marketing spiel? Well, perhaps, but in general terms, this is what we're going to need. And from somebody like Hyundai with their N brand, which is fast becoming one of the quickest growing motorsport brands in the world, it's quite an interesting thing to take a look at, as we shall now see. So let's start with the most obvious of the two, which is the RN22E, which is, to all intents and purposes, a sporty Ioniq 6. Now, Hyundai's N brand, as I say, it's kind of the fastest growing motorsport brand out there, and they've had great success in rallying and world touring cars. And given what the kind of magic they've managed to sprinkle onto their smaller cars, such as the i20 and i30, not mentioning turning the little Kona crossover into quite a hot little thing, the rumour mill to be believed, it's the Ioniq 5 that we're going to see get the N treatment next. But boy, does this bode well for the N treatment on Ioniq 6. Now, what they've done is basically take a standard Ioniq 6 and apply some wonderful new technologies to it to turn it into this enthusiast, this rolling laboratory of enthusiasts that they'll just get a bit hot under the collar about. Not to mention some very, very trick aero. There's some very, very clever engineering going on under the skin as well. And the first of which we're going to talk about is Cornering Rascal. Yep, Cornering Rascal. Now, the first thing to note is the ELSD, or in Hyundai speak, the corner carving differential. I know. Now, it fits this to across most of its end products in the Hyundai range, but here it is slightly different, because what you do have here is a twin clutch differential, which just torque vectoring. In other words, the driver can adjust the amount of torque that's being deployed between the front and the rear motors, playing it being a bit of a chassis engineer. So, for instance, if you're on a racetrack and you may want a more rear bias setup, you can do that. On your wet Wednesday afternoon on your drive home on the A43, you may want a more evenly distributed power, so you can do that. Now, the other thing as well is inevitably, EVs carry a weight penalty, and that is where Hyundai have also been very, very clever. Now, there's a clever use of 3D printing that's been used in the RN22E, in other words, to reduce a lot of weight, because obviously, as I say, you've got the weight of an electrical battery system, an electric drivetrain. Of particular note is these brakes. Now these are 4-piston monoblock calipers that are gripping 400mm hybrid discs. Now, as well as anything else, it will allow Hyundai to study how regenerative braking can affect things like yaw and pitch and movement and directional movement in a racetrack or enthusiastic drive scenario. So, all very impressive, but are they just design studies? Well, as I say, no, they're called rolling labs, and that's so that the engineers can develop new technologies and focus them more towards performance EVs. And the N22E does feature a couple of very, very clever things. Now, forgive my notes here, but it integrates a thing called an N Sound Plus with an NE Shift, which integrates the vibration and shifting feel with a sound generator to give the driver more of a dynamic experience. Now, whether the noise is made by thrashing pistons or whether it's a Casio concerto, let's be honest, it makes no odds to the majority of drivers. It's still using those same senses, in other words, sound and feel. Go say hello to the N Vision 74, the most exciting thing to come out of Korea since K-pop. It looks like the work of a man called Kaizal Salim, and if you don't know who he is, go onto Instagram, look him up. Very, very talented chap. But it is in fact all of Hyundai's design department's own work. It takes the original 1974 Giugiaro Pony Coupe concept and, well, makes it look like it's something that's just dropped out of a Fast and Furious movie. But this is also a very, very important car for Hyundai, as we shall now explain. Now, Hyundai, as we know, is one of the manufacturers who have really championed hydrogen fuel cell vehicles, and having driven the Nexo, their actual productionised hydrogen car, I can say now it is an incredible car, and they have done an incredible job of that, if only the infrastructure was there to support it. However, what this is, what the N Vision 74 is, believe it or not, a hybrid. So it uses a hydrogen fuel cell along with a battery electric motor. And Hyundai say that that is there to give, and the way they've done it is they've done it in a completely different layout to anything before, to aid cooling and efficiency, and the way it distributes the power to twin electric rear motors, which will allow, again, that word, that phrase, torque vectoring between the rear wheels to give a much better cornering system. This could be a real enthusiast's dream, if only they'd make it exactly like this. Of course, the other benefit of hydrogen fuel cell is how fast it takes to refuel it. But they've been here before with the hydrogen thing. You know, they did it back a few years back. They also did another concept car called the Hyundai N 2025 Vision Gran Turismo, and that used hydrogen power. They seem pretty convinced on this hydrogen lark, don't they? Yet, despite all of the technology, the thing that's going to make us remember this concept the most is the way that it looks. But we shouldn't feel too bad about that, because it's further evidence of Hyundai using design to shift people's perceptions of what the company used to be all about. Except this time, perversely, it's using a car from its past to do that. Concept cars are usually flights of fancy. They're design studies. Maybe a little bit of technology thrown in as well. And certainly in the N Vision 74, that's pretty much exactly what we're seeing. But we shouldn't feel bad about that, as I say, because it gets us talking about Hyundai as the maker of very cool, very performance-focused cars in a new EV world. But the N22E is a little bit different, because we know that the Ioniq 6 is coming, and we know that Hyundai's N brand is growing, and it's producing some excellent cars in such things like the i20, the i30 and the little Kona with their N variants. And if they're applying that to the Ioniq 5 soon, and then hopefully the Ioniq 6 with something that looks like this, then that can only be a good thing. And as the fact that we're all at AutoEV true petrol heads, personally, we can't wait. Thank you once again for watching another edition of Sneak Peeks on AutoEV. As always, please remember to make sure that you've subscribed to the AutoEV channel, and once you've done that, press the bell button down below, because then that way you'll be notified when our next video goes live. If you have liked the video, make sure you give it a thumbs up and do leave us some comments down below. Remember, we're also on all social media platforms as well: Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn and Facebook, so give us a follow there too, because every little bit helps. And if you've enjoyed this episode and you want to know more about electric cars, despite the fact you've been told that by a slightly overweight little Scotsman, then stick on the AutoEV YouTube channel and just take a dial through a back catalogue of road test reviews, sneak peeks and our electric icon series. All that remains for me to say is thank you ever so much for joining me today at a slightly noisy caffeine machine. Thank you to Hyundai for putting these wonderful cars on display, and I'll see you again soon. So, you've watched our video. It's now my job to tell you to like and subscribe and press the little bell button to receive notification of when our next video is uploaded.